Welcome to Jordy's Rocketry YouTube channel. Today, this is Jordy's Rocketry. We're going to make a face shield for one of the SpaceX helmets. And I have a 2x2 frame that I've made. Notice there's marks on the frame so I know how to put it back together each time. And what I do is I take a 24x24 PETG sheet that I get at a local e-plastics supplier. Things you want to make sure, you want to leave the plastic film on both sides when you form it, but you don't want to have a bunch of loose wrinkles over where you're going to be forming. The buck that I'm going to be using is pretty much middle of this, and what I do is I grab a drill and I drill in 1/4 inch holes all the way around it. Grab the drill, grab the 1/4 inch bit. Hang it off the edge of the table so you're not drilling into the table. Put the corners in first, and then you'll notice in the I have some bolts here that are just loose for basically pinning it. Look at that! I got to drill that one again. Pin the corners and then try to stretch it as best you can with your thumb. That way this has a little bit of tension on it. It doesn't need a whole lot. Here, can you find the buck? I think it's right over there. And go ahead and throw that out on the vacuum former. Okay. Alright, so we got our holes in there. Next step is, see I have the mark right there? That's where we're going to take this off of this frame, but we need to put it on the other frame in the right orientation. So I take the mark and flip it around, grab that sheet, drop it right on the holes. Push it down. It'll have a little bit of tension, so that's a good thing. Kind of have to fight it to get bolts on sometimes. All right, and there's the line. Take the line, find it, line it up. And then basically we're going to throw a washer and a butterfly on each one of these and tighten them down. Alright, and then after this, the important thing is take your soft t-shirt, something that you have, and we're going to wipe down both sides of this plastic, even on the outside of the film. We don't want a little something in between the plastic and the buck, which will show up even, especially in a clear face shield where you're trying to get some ability to see out of it without a lot of blurs and a lot of distortions. So you want to clean a lot on every step. Okay, next step will be out on the vacuum former. Okay, so the next step is going to be basically getting the plastic on the heat box. Heat box is just some MDF with some foil tape on the inside of it and 3 really cheap like $10 to $12 burners I got on Amazon. I turn these on and I set them for basically medium high, and I give them a few moments. I check the inside of the panel to make sure it's clean, and then I lay it on top of there. And it'll take a few minutes, but you'll see the reflection start to sag. And we'll just kind of sit here and wait on it. We can edit some of the time out if we need to after. I'll try to keep all the little tree droppings off of the plastic. This side doesn't matter as much as the underside. Here in a second, you'll get a picture of the buck and the vacuum table. Yeah, you can start to see it kind of doing its thing. That's one of the, I like that song. There is a little bit of a wind, a breeze today, and it's kind of chilly here, so it's going to take a little longer than normal for it to get soft and ready to go. And it'll take about 3 or 4 minutes for it to do its thing. Go ahead and pause. Okay, you can see it's starting to sag a little bit, although the wind today has been kind of a challenge. I'm going to go ahead and give it another 5 or 6 seconds here, and then we're going to move over to the vacuum table. And you'll notice I'll set it on there and I'll push it down, and then I'll push my hands along the front edge. That's just to kind of give it an extra stretch. I think we're getting really close. Okay, go. Pause the video. I'm gonna go get. And you have to wait like 10 seconds before it actually starts. Okay, so the vacuum form is about 90%. There's a little bit of lift here, and on the same side where my hands were kind of like this instead of straight. So I grab the heat gun, put it on full blast, heat it up pretty good, and I'll tell my son here in a minute to start the vacuum again. Okay, go ahead. On the other side, you can see it's a lot cleaner now. This is just kind of a save what you can. Sometimes these go so bad you have to throw them out. Okay, turn the vacuum back on. Okay, that's just how to fix the vacuum form or the heat gun on the table. Okay, next step is taking this off the table and then taking it back in and cleaning it up. Okay, so the last step of the vacuum form process is to actually take it off the vacuum form frame, mark, trim, and drill the holes. There's kind of a process here to get these right, so I'm going to kind of get to it and I'll explain as I go. So take all the butterflies off. Do our best to get the washers off. Sometimes you have to wait and flip them off when you take the. So I have smaller frames for different projects and different vacuum beds for different size things. But the SpaceX face shields, the helmets, cosplay helmets, the first couple I tried on the smaller bed and it just didn't have enough material to stretch and to do a good product. So I had to go to a higher 24 by 24 inch vacuum bed, which I saw on a YouTube video, make it yourself kind of a thing, and I worked on my own, but it worked out really well. Okay, so then we just basically take the top frame off. I usually set it aside out of the way. And then just grab one corner and kind of work my way around, opening and taking the plastic off the bottom frame. You can see it's not really a gentle process, it's just kind of get it done. And then lay that there, lay the frame out of the way. Next step is to grab my little red Sharpie marker that I like using. And actually first, what I do normally, because most of this material is going to be excess, I cut basically along kind of that red line right there with my scissors. And that's the beauty with the PETG that's 0.030, I think it is, thick, is you can take a pair of heavy duty shears and just cut right through it like butter. This also makes it a lot better when I'm producing, you know, 5 or 10 of these shields at a time. It makes it a lot easier to get the buck out of the material so that I can get it ready for the next one to be formed. But anyway, you can kind of see. So, take the excess plastic out of the way. Normally I throw that in the recycle bin. I'll do that later. Okay, so the next step is to basically take my 3/16 drill bit. And what I'm going to do is part of the shield is, well, you know what, the 3D printed shields have these holes for putting hot glue through the actual shields to mount. This being the first shield for one of the rotocast helmets, I probably don't need holes, so I'm going to just cut it and leave the drilling part out of that. Okay, so let's get a good picture. I'll scoot over here so it's a little better picture. Where does it go? Okay, we'll do it there. Okay, so the next thing is the little red marker. What I'll do is this edge right here, that's kind of the edge of where the shield needs to be, so I always run a red line. Remember, I've got the film still on the inside and the outside of this, so I'm marking on the actual outside film. It's not going to go through the plastic or onto the actual product, but it also gives me a really clean way of cutting. Part of the next step is removing it off of the buck, but then I'll still have the rough edges that I need to know where to cut, so that's why I'm doing this. Alright, so we got that. Next step is basically taking, and I'm going to cut this piece out kind of roughly with the shears, and then I'll be able to remove the plastic off the buck once I have that done. It's just kind of a challenge sometimes to get up under here. Let's try that way. Sometimes the shears are upside down. Alright, so then that piece is out, that's recyclable. Now what I do is I take it, grab an edge, and then I kind of work my way around, and usually it just pops right out. Clean the buck. Every once in a while it needs a little bit of wax. It's got a little bit of defect in it right here. I'm going to basically sanding and refinishing this part of the buck before the next one I make. And you'll notice that there's just a smidge of a line kind of in the actual translucency, but it's still a pretty good shield. Okay, so the last piece is just trimming it out. That's usually just take your time and follow the red line. And sometimes it just depends on what you feel like. Do you want to cut that way, or do you want to I'm going to cut the arch off first. I'm really good at this. Some days it takes a little. There we go. That's the way you go. And you can see I'm cutting a little bit on the inside red line, but even if there's a little bit of a red line left, it'll peel off because it's on the actual outside. I'll try to do it this way. All right. And then the next video here, the next part of the video, will be me mounting this in the first rotocast SpaceX helmet, my prototype, but hopefully it'll be a production one here real soon. Yeah, these shears are starting to get gummed up. I did some sticky weather stripping on them the other day and I need to clean that off with some lacquer thinner. Okay, so ta-da, one SpaceX face shield. Now this face shield is PETG. It can be tinted. There's a iPoly. Here we go. There's some tint called iDye poly. Make sure you get the poly version. The iDye regular version will never tint the plastic. You have to get the poly version. The black works really well. I haven't tried the other colors, but I've seen shields that people have done that are blue, and I had a guy try to do a gold tint. Don't know if that worked out. I haven't heard from him. Anyway, you get 2 of these packets. You can get them for $7.99 each. They are pricey, so if you have other things you want to dye, you probably want to get 2 packs. The other thing I've learned is I've got a 5-gallon bucket with a good solid lid on it that I keep the dye between dye sessions. So I reuse the $14, $15 worth of dye each time, and I have them and I've got backup packets to kind of top it off. But if you don't want a clear shield and you want to tint it, trick with this is you get a bucket that's big enough for the shield to fit in, and with the holes you just hook it with like a hanger and dangle it in the bucket. The trick with these is you want to heat the water up to about 145 degrees and then shut the burners off, and then basically you want to dip you want to peel the protective coating off of both sides. You wash it with soap and water. Make sure you do a really good job of washing it. You set it in there and you do 3 minutes is kind of a light tint, 6 minutes is kind of a medium tint, and 9 minutes is getting really dark, but the dark tint starts to get a little splotchy. If you want it uber dark, you leave it in for 15 minutes, and it's very dark, but it's very hard to see through. Okay, next step is putting it on the helmet.